Tactical shooters are not about speed. They are about being completely sure. When you hold an angle in Counter-Strike 2, you are not waiting to make a massive wall flick. You are waiting to make a tiny perfect movement under extreme pressure. For years, Artisan was the only name that mattered in the premium control space. But recently, we have seen a lot of new control pads trying to offer something even more grounded. Superbeings Lab entered the market with the Memoria Pro, but today we are talking about their dedicated slow pad, the Massimo Pro. Before we get into the friction details, let's look at the physical build. For the size, it is a standard XL. That is 490 by 420 millimeters. It is plenty of space for players who use a very low sensitivity. The art design is a personal choice. I have the Rebirth version. It is abstract and bright, but it looks clean. And the most important part is that the print has zero coating. The glide feels the exact same across the entire pad. The stitching on the Massimo Pro is top tier. It is very tight and it sits completely below the playing surface. Your forearm will never rub against a sharp edge, and your mouse gates will never catch the threading when you do a wide swipe. It matches the best pads in the industry. The surface itself is made from a custom texture cloth. From far away, it looks like a normal weave, but if you look very close, you can see a slightly mixed pattern. This pattern is designed to trap a tiny layer of air. Because of this, it feels quite smooth on the skin. It is noticeably smoother than the Memoria Pro or an Artisan Zero, but it still keeps enough texture to give your hand physical feedback about how fast your mouse is moving. Beneath the surface is something very interesting. Artisan uses boron foam. Superbeings Lab uses their own custom base called SoftGlide foam. The bottom has that sticky glossy finish that acts like a suction cup on your desk. Once you place it down and press it in, it will not move a centimeter. The foam firmness is perfect. It gives tactical players exactly what they need. When you are tense or you need to stop your mouse at the end of a fast flick, you can actively press your mouse down into the foam. The foam will absorb that force. It pushes back against your skates, giving you heavy brakes right when you need them, without making the pad feel like mud during normal use. Let's talk about the physics of aiming on this pad. This is the main reason you are watching this video. We need to split friction into two simple categories, static and dynamic. Static friction is the force that you need to start moving your mouse from a dead stop. This is the single most important detail for Counter-Strike. If the static friction is too high, the pad feels sticky. When you try to make a tiny change to your aim while holding an angle, you have to push too hard to break the stickiness. This makes you overshoot the enemy's head. The Massimo Pro has a medium to high static friction. It gives you extreme stability when holding your crosshair still, but the start of the movement is surprisingly clean. You do not get that heavy initial tug that ruins cheaper control pads. Dynamic friction is the drag you feel while the mouse is already sliding. The Massimo Pro is a true control pad. The dynamic friction is high. It feels slower and more grounded than an Artisan Zero. It has massive natural stopping power. When you throw a fast flick, the cloth itself is actively trying to slow the mouse down. It feels very smooth and very easy to read. Based on how this friction feels, the Massimo Pro has a very clear user in mind. This mousepad is built from the ground up for tactical shooters like Counter-Strike 2 and Valorant. In CS2, 90% of aiming is crosshair placement and tiny correction. You need high dynamic drag to lock in your movement so your hand does not wobble. You need the foam base to push into when you're under fire. The medium static friction means that when you are holding a tiny pixel angle on Inferno, for example, you have the stability to keep the crosshair totally still. But you also have the smoothness to react in a split second if the enemy wide swings. It hides the nervous hand shaking that faster hybrid pads will always expose. On the other hand, if you play games with a lot of tracking like Apex or Overwatch, the Massimo Pro might feel too slow for you. The heavy drag makes smooth, non-stop tracking very tiring on your arm. You will be fighting the pad the whole time. So, where does it fit in the market? It is smoother and slightly slower than an Artisan Zero. It feels closer to a Little Gaming Gear Saturn Pro, but with a cleaner, more unique cloth feeling. The Superbeings Lab Massimo Pro is a perfect balance. It takes the heavy stopping power that control players love and matches it with a premium sticky base and an edge stitching that beats almost anything else. It avoids the dreaded muddy feeling of budget mud pads by keeping the start of your mouse movement clean and crisp. If you live in CS2 and you want a grounded, safe, locked in aiming experience that lets you trust your muscle memory completely, the Massimo Pro is an amazing choice. It proves that Superbeings Lab is a major player in the control space.